taken the time to make sure that the candidates know that you're concerned and you are wanting to hear what they have to say in real time. And just a note on that, KBAC never gives questions ahead of time. Some people may find that rude and insulting, but we want to make sure that you are coming from your heart, they're coming from their heart and not scripted. You know, this life is full of scripts nowadays, but we'd rather see the real you in our candidates. So thank you so much for indulging us with that. So we're going to keep moving, and our timekeeper is ready, our moderator is ready, and if you're ready, we're going to go ahead and get this party started. So thank you very much again. This is KBAC's 2023 Candidate Forum. Thank you.
Greetings and good afternoon. Welcome to the Kent Black Action Commission live stream Candidate Forum 2023. This is our second round of candidates today. For now, we have position number 7 is currently held by Zandria Mashad, who is the incumbent, and her challenger is Daryl Jones. And at this time, we're going to allow each of them to speak for 90 seconds for an introduction and opening statements. And we'll start with the incumbent.
Thank you so much, Charles, and to KBAC for giving us this opportunity this evening. I grew up here in Kent. I grew up in a mobile home park over by Park Orchard Elementary and eventually graduated from Kentwood High School. My parents could not afford to send me to college, so I joined the Army instead. I was in the Army for 5 years, and then I came back to Washington State and eventually ended up moving here to Kent, chose to live here in Kent and raise my family. I graduated from the University of Washington, Tacoma, and during that time, I also was involved in the community. I coached youth basketball for Kent Parks and the YMCA, and I also joined this program called Green Kent. We did conservation events in the parks. I was also on the Kent Parks and Recreation Commission, and during this time, there was a lot of violence and crime happening in the park across the street from my house, so I met with some police officers and some parks officials to make some changes there. And that's pretty much when I decided that I was going to run for council. And so in 2019, right before COVID, I ran for council, and I've been on council for the past 4 years.
Thank you. And now a word from Mr. Daryl Jones.
Yes, thank you, Charles. And thank you to KBAC for having me here. I moved to Kent about 6 years ago, but I moved to Washington 11 years ago. And in those first 5 years, I lived in Fife once, Tacoma twice, Federal Way twice. So you see, I moved around until I got here to Kent. And once I got to Kent, I liked what I saw. You know, it has a quaint small town feel to it, but then as I drove around the city, it's a lot larger than I thought it was. Okay. But that started to change probably about 3 years ago. You see, that's when I started noticing increased homelessness, increased crime, increased broken windows and other property damage. And just recently, I believe it was Police Chief Padilla when he spoke at the city council, and he said that public property crimes had gone down because businesses had fortified their structures. And I don't believe it's the place for any business to have to fortify your structure to keep you from being robbed. That's a responsibility of the police department and the city that governs it. Seeing this, I decided, well, if you want to make a change, you have to be willing to go beyond yourself. I've never been in politics before, had no desire to be in politics, but somebody had to do something. And that somebody just happens to be me this time. So that's my introduction. Thank you for your time.
Thank you both for your opening statements. And now we're going to get to our questions. We have a new question that was not brought up earlier in the first session. And now, that's better. For the new question, what would you do to better prepare the city of Kent for future pandemics such as COVID-19? And we will start with the incumbent.
Thank you so much. So we learned so much during the pandemic. It was something nobody ever expected, especially not me, since I was just elected to council. It was quite the interesting experience. So one of the good things that council has done is made sure that we had enough money in our reserves to deal with that pandemic. We had to seriously think about, are we going to lay off people? Are we going to put people, staff on furlough? What can we do to overcome the challenges? Because our tax base was reduced during that time and people needed help. And so we continue to make sure that we have money in the reserve so we can cover those expenses. I think we figured it out. You know, we did a good job getting ARPA dollars out. We still have a lot of funding left to give out. One of the issues was that organizations didn't have the staff capacity. So we do need to do a better job of ensuring that there are people who are trained to help get that money out to those in need. That is one thing we could improve. The Human Services Commission did an amazing job of reviewing grants and ensuring that money was going to the places that people needed. So I would continue to do what we're doing, make sure we have money stashed away for a potential pandemic. Let's hope something like that doesn't ever happen again. But yeah, just continue what we're doing.
Okay. Thank you. To you, Mr. Jones, same question.
Yes, to better prepare for a pandemic, yes, money is nice, but it should be about the people in Kent. And I would suggest basically making people more aware of healthcare options for them, more aware of what's available, try to push people to keep their vaccinations current, try to push people to go in and have their annual checkups, because if you have a strong immunity system, you'll be better able to fight off COVID-19. Beyond that, yes, money in the event that businesses have to close down, and that would actually be one of the final things that I would want to have to do is force somebody to close their business. But we do have to keep enough money to actually keep city government operating. So with the money in the general fund, that should be able to continue to occur. But my focus would be on keeping the residents of Kent healthy and safe.
Thank you. Okay, the next question. What do you believe are the top 3 priorities for the city of Kent over the next 2 years? And how would you plan to address them if elected?
Okay. Well, first, I'd like to actually preface my response with this, and every other response that I give. But my opinion and how I would handle an issue for the city, they don't really matter, because an elected official is supposed to represent the will of the people and enact the measures that the people want, and not an official's personal ideology. Now, that being said, when it comes to 3 things that I believe should be handled, the first is the situation with the homeless. It's difficult to actually resolve the issue if there are no homeless shelters. And now, from my understanding, there is currently one, and there's about $4 million floating around somewhere in government for assistance with organizations, to give to an organization to work with them to establish a shelter so we can have someplace for the people to go. It's not just about pushing them outside of the city limits and saying, oh, problem solved. It's about giving them somewhere to go if you're not going to have them in the city. Secondly, there's the issue with the businesses. You can go right along the street up there on Central Avenue and see all these businesses with their windows boarded up. Crime is an issue that needs to be resolved. Not all of it can be attributed to the homeless, but a lot of it is. And the third thing is doing something with the criminals. In that case, we don't need to find somewhere to put them. We've got somewhere, the Regional Justice Center. It's time for the city attorney to step up and say, okay, we're not going to stand for this anymore. Possibly even enacting ordinances against loitering and increasing minimum sentences for repeat offenders. What is this? Arrest them, prosecute them, incarcerate them, give them time to think about what they've done and think about turning their lives around.
Thank you. Same question.
Okay. All right. Number one, public safety. Everyone deserves to feel safe in their home and safe in Kent. I've been a victim of crime. My house has been broken into. I've had carjacking across the street from me that involved a shooting. How I'm going to address that is I'll continue to support and fund our police department. We have more officers today than we have ever had in the past. And not only do we have more officers than ever before, but also they are better trained. And we have done a lot of things to ensure that we have changed the culture of the police department here in Kent. And the second thing is making sure that we are getting resources to those in need. That includes housing, mental health, and drug treatment. We're going to continue to fund the co-responder model that sends out a healthcare worker and a nurse and a social worker out for the police department for people facing crisis or who just need some extra resources. We're also pooling our money with other King County cities to ensure that people have places to go, such as shelter and housing. And then the last thing is affordable housing. We have a variety of housing options, or we need to ensure that we have a variety of housing options here in Kent, and we are working on the city's comprehensive plan right now. That is a 20-year vision of the city of Kent, and everyone who lives here in Kent or works in Kent is available, or has the opportunity to put input into that plan. So if you ever see on social media, come in and tell us what you want to see in Kent for the next 20 years, please do that. That'll give us ideas on where to zone low-income housing or have multifamily housing or allow more properties on a lot, those types of things. So that's what we are doing for that. And those are my top 3 priorities.
Thank you. The next question deals with housing and homelessness. Kent is facing challenges related to housing affordability and homelessness. There are many stakeholders throughout the region who are working on these issues. As a candidate, what solution or solutions do you propose to address this issue that you may not have addressed before in the question? But I'm going to give Darrell Jones the opportunity to speak on this one first.
Okay, well, first, as I guess I just stated in my previous response, the thing is actually creating, first let's try creating affordable housing, because rents have been going up here in Kent, and some people that were at the margin have been pushed to the other side, or their families are struggling. So let us create more affordable housing to actually keep people from becoming homeless. Then in dealing with the homeless, as I stated previously, it's time to take that money and spend it. You don't have to look for the perfect solution. So I'm going to just hold on to this money until I find the perfect partner, and then we're going to work together. Compromise. Find an organization, meet them halfway, 75, 25 even. Doesn't matter. The thing is, let's start to get something done now, and then we can figure other things out along the way. Because that money's not doing anybody any good sitting in city government coffers.
Okay, as I stated before, we have funded co-responders that go out into encampments and also meet people out on the streets and offer services. City's also working on a comprehensive plan to look at where to put low-income housing and the missing middle housing. And then we also give our sales tax dollars to the South King County Homelessness Authority, which gives grants to housing projects, and they have the authority to give out those grants. That's where that money is sitting. Thankfully, 2 of those projects that have been proposed are actually here in Kent, so we will see what that agency decides if those projects in Kent are worthy. Our Human Services Department also funds organizations that provide shelters and housing services right here in Kent. Gwen can tell you that as part of a member of that commission, that we ensure that the services reach the people in Kent. That is our top priority.
Thank you very much. And now we collected some questions from the audience, and Mr. Gunn will present those questions to our candidates.
Okay. Thank you very much, Charles. My name's Clarence Gunn, and I'm with the Coalition of Immigrants, Refugees, and Communities of Color. And we have been partners with KBAC for the last, before the pandemic. So, in their activities in terms of representing the communities and hosting these kinds of events. So it's my pleasure to be here this afternoon, evening. There were several questions that were brought by the community in round one, and we're going to ask some of those same questions, and then because of the smaller group, we might ask a couple extra ones. So let's just go ahead and dive in. We've talked about it a little bit, but let's go ahead and ask the question about homelessness. Is the camping ordinance working without a shelter in Kent? Why or why not? Is that me? Sorry. I was the timer earlier, right?
Okay.
Charles, you figure out who starts first.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Jones, go ahead and take that question since.
Okay, it depends actually on your definition of the word working. Are there fewer homeless people on the street here in Kent? Yes, but again, they've just been pushed right outside of the city limits sign. So if you, in asking me, I would say, no, it's not working. It's working for the city, but it's not working for those who've been disenfranchised. So halfway working, halfway not working.
So this ordinance was passed in hopes that by people potentially facing consequences of going to jail, that they would take resources. So our officers go out, give people the opportunity to take resources. They offer shelter. And unfortunately, not everyone takes those resources. We cannot force people into housing. If they don't want it, we have no options here. They have to move. They either have to move or go to jail. This was our way of forcing them to make that decision for them. Sometimes you have to do some tough love. We now have Vine Maple Place here in Kent, along with our long-standing shelters. We do have shelters here in Kent. I pulled up an email with a list of all the shelters here in Kent. I have a list. I can email it out. It is much too long for me to list them all out. So I just want to clarify and say we do have shelters here in Kent. People are offered housing and shelter here in Kent. They have that opportunity. They just need to take it.
The next question, Clarence.
Question number 2. Marysville has passed a repeat offender ordinance for 3 misdemeanors mandating 30 days in jail. Should Kent also have a repeat offender ordinance?
Sandra, would you take that one first, please?
I don't know all the details of this law, but I can tell you that we probably do not have the capacity in our jail, nor the staff capacity to handle something like that. I mean, haven't we tried this before and it did not work? It failed people. People need resources, not jail time. So probably not. I haven't seen exactly what they're proposing. You know, you have to give people options. So no, I mean, ultimately, without knowing all the details of it, no.
Okay, thank you.
I'm familiar with the law over there in Marysville, and yes, I believe that we should adopt something like that here in Kent. I believe that people already have options. You can be a criminal or you can be a law-abiding citizen. You can go to jail or you can go home. Allowing criminals to commit crimes repetitively just makes the problem worse. I believe in Seattle, somebody had been arrested 172 times and then assaulted someone at the light rail station and then pushed over a man in a wheelchair. 172 times he had been arrested and let go. You can look at New York City with the shoplifting. People have been arrested 250 times. There are resources there. They just do not avail themselves of those resources. And just today, I heard of a woman, I believe it was in Chicago, tried to get her son arrested because he kept stealing cars and kept letting him out of jail. That's your child. And even she realizes that some people need to face that jail time so that they can say, okay, I got to turn this around. This is not what I want. So yes, we should adopt that law.
Alrighty.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Clarence, I think we have one more.
Oh, just one. Uh-oh. Let's see. Only.
Okay. Actually, two. So.
Okay, two. Good.
Yeah.
I had five, but I can winnow it down. How would you support the creation of affordable housing in Kent?
I'm sorry, would you repeat that? If you don't mind?
Sure. How would you support the creation of affordable housing in Kent?
Okay, well, how would I support that? Give me a moment to mull that over because I want to give you a substantive response as opposed to a vacuous yet quick one. How would I support it? Well, first, I work with the council to actually find property where we could either work with the property owner, or if it's just property that's sitting out there, purchase it and then build on that property and zone that for affordable housing. People making less than X number of dollars or less than the or 30% of the area median. And actually, I did work for the Seattle Housing Authority for about 4 years. So I know that there are resources and things we can do as a city to create affordable housing for our low-income residents.
Kent already has some of the most affordable housing in our region. That is one of the reasons people live here. We have King County Housing Authority properties here in Kent. We have a lot of them. There are very few things that the city can legally do to encourage developers to build here. I can't force developers to build affordable housing here. That's not how our society works. Developers are going to build where they are going to make the most money. But there are some things we can do, and we have done them in the past for high density housing. There are some tax breaks that we can give those developers, and we have done that. And I have done that as part of the council. Like I said earlier, we are working on the comprehensive plan that will include where do we put affordable housing, how do we get there. So we are working on it, and everyone has the opportunity to give their input on that plan.
Okay, thank you. Clarence, are you ready for another one?
Sure. Zandria just mentioned about the city's comprehensive plan. Thank you. Mentioned about the city's comprehensive plan for 2024. What will be your approach to maximizing housing supply and affordability via the comprehensive plan?
Go ahead and take that.
So the state has just made it a requirement that we allow a certain amount of houses on each lot. So the thing that the city has to do is make sure that we have all the infrastructure. So if you're going to build 4 houses on the lot, we need to make sure that we have enough capacity in our sewer line, in our water lines, power, all those things. So we are working on that and considering that. That is the major part of our comprehensive plan, is trying to figure out where it would be most advantageous to build high density and allow people to upzone. I mean, the state says we have to. So we're trying to figure out where we can encourage that growth to happen so that all the infrastructure is there so we can support this additional housing. Like I said before, we can use I can't remember the name of it, but it's a tax credit for developers to build high density housing in certain areas. We're doing that. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Same question, Mr. Jones.
Yes, if you could repeat the question again.
Sure. What would be your approach to the city's 2024 comprehensive plan to maximize housing supply and affordability?
Thank you. And to tell you the truth, I am unfamiliar with that plan. But honestly, all I'm hearing is, well, not just from Xandra, but from the council itself, because we have a lot of plans and we have a lot of commissions and we're doing a lot of studies, but what is actually getting done? Because I can plan for things or whatnot, but if I don't do anything about it. So I can't really comment on the question because I'm unfamiliar with the plan itself. But anything that can alleviate the high rents and make things more affordable for those disenfranchised people in our community, I'd be all for it, and I would support it 100%.
All right. Thank you. One more, Clarence.
Oh, okay. One more. There was a question in the first round, but I didn't get it in writing, so I apologize. I'll have to just do another one. Do you believe that Kent should abolish the ban on the sale of cannabis in the city? Why or why not?
The train.
Repeat that
okay,
again.
sure.
Say it louder.
I was being nice and quiet. Do you believe that Kent should abolish the ban on the sales of cannabis in the city? Why or why not?
Actually, no. The reason why is that since it's legal in the state, I figured that we'd be infringing upon people's rights to actually run a business. Now, me personally, I don't like it, but they should be free to do it if it is legal. And basically, that's my reason why I believe that the cannabis that they have now, the marijuana that they have right now, is more powerful than it was back in the day, and it can lead to certain mental disorders. And so that can make it so that people are a danger to the community. I'm just all about not taking people's rights away.
I think that we should keep the ban, and here's why. Our police department is already stretched thin. If you watch the news, you will see that dispensaries regularly get broken into and they turn deadly. Just earlier this year, there were several that were happening in other cities where people were actually dying because people were coming in, stealing money, because they don't have the ability, these dispensaries don't have the ability to use banks, so they have to keep cash on hand. And so it's an easy place to go, get cash, and leave. And it's led to some unfortunate incidents where people have been killed and there's been a lot of property damage, and our police department cannot handle that right now. We do not have the capacity for that. So I will not advocate for that.
Thank you. I do believe we have one question in the back. Is that what I was?
Does anyone have a question? Yes, it's your time to shine.
Well, being a former board member of Kent Hope, I've been around this issue for quite some time, and emergency assistant director for Kent United Methodist Church will help with renovictions and power outages. The city of Kent had an opportunity to do small, tiny houses. I personally thought that was a really good plan. King County was going to pay for it. They had the church behind it to mentor. They had case management coming in, and yet the council decided to push it off into studies. And I'm wondering where those studies are today, or if there's more studies going on, or if there's actually concrete stuff coming out of that today. Thank you.
Mr. Jones, are you familiar with any of that? I was asking Mr. Jones if he was familiar with any of that to provide an answer.
No, because like I said, the studies are coming from the city council, and so I don't have access to that information. That's okay. But I am familiar with the tiny house villages that they were talking about building. And basically the only issue that I would have had with that is I can't remember the name of the organization that was going to run it, but it was the same organization that was running a homeless village. There may have been tiny houses there in Seattle, and that turned into a nightmare. And so tiny houses would be a good idea, but just with a different firm or different agency managing it.
Daryl and I agree on that. Yes, it was Lehigh that was doing this, proposing this, and they kind of went about it backwards without involving the community. There was the pastor was for it at the church. Members of the church were unaware and did not know about the project. And then neighbors just found out about it in a roundabout way. That's not how things should be done, I don't think. I think that the neighborhood should have been informed about this happening. So yes, we said we are going to wait on this, and we are going to address tiny house villages as part of our comprehensive plan. So that is where it's being studied. I, as a council member, don't have the staff to do individual studies like that. So our staff is working on it. It will be part of the comprehensive plan. We are not against tiny home villages. I also just want to say that these tiny home villages would have housed people who can find shelter elsewhere very easily. It was for women and children and families, people not on drugs, people without mental health challenges. So it would have been, it was for this like high level people, and they could find housing elsewhere. So yes, we are addressing it. It's part of the comprehensive plan. There wasn't a good public process. Lehigh is kind of a disaster. And so that's where we're at with that.
Thank you. That was the last of the questions for these candidates. So now we're going to allow them 90 seconds for a closing statement, starting with Mr. Jones.
As author Orrin Woodward put it, the greatest leaders are reluctant ones who lead because they realize that no one else seems willing to step up. They may not crave leadership, but they're willing to do what they must and take up the charge. However, it's still a choice that reluctant leaders must make. I consider myself a reluctant leader because generally I just want to go home from work, cook a nice meal, read, and finally relax in front of the television before I go to bed. However, too many people have asked me to run for office, and too many times I've been called upon as a private citizen to protect Kent's residents. And just last week, my coworker almost had her car stolen in the employee parking lot at gunpoint. Now, I can't help all of Kent's residents as a private citizen, but I can work to protect them all as a city council member. And now, in concluding my statement, I'm not going to ask for your vote. What I will ask is that you take a drive around Kent. You drive around here in the valley, up to 140th Ave Southeast, down to 40th Street. If you like what you see, then I'm not the candidate you want to vote for. The thing is, no offense, my opponent is the incumbent and would be thus better suited to continue to provide you with what you would apparently like. If you don't like what you see, then cast your vote for me, because I will shake things up as if it was a 10.6 earthquake. Okay, it's time for a change here in Kent. I say it's time for Daryl Jones in Kent.
Thank you.
So as a council member, I cannot do anything on my own. One person on council cannot just do whatever they want. I have to be able to work with at least 3 other council members to be able to enact whatever changes that we want to happen. We need someone who can work with others. As a council member, all I can do is vote for the budget and pass ordinances. I cannot tell the police chief, go do this. I can't tell human services, go, offer services to these people. Now, if I have a good relationship with staff members, then I can go to the chief and make suggestions and say, hey, why don't we do this? Or I can go to our human services director or our parks director and say, you know what, this would be a really good idea. Why don't we try this? So it's so important to be able to work with staff, and thankfully I have that good relationship. I work well with the police chief. We've been able to accomplish a whole lot that didn't involve ordinances or the budget. So just if you ever have any issues in the city, please come talk to me. I'm a reasonable person. I give thoughtful, I think about this stuff all the time, and I do my research and I show up. I've been to so many events, and I like connecting with you. So please, let's have a conversation and let's talk about these things so that we can create the best Kent possible. So thank you.
And thank you. Okay. I think that was all we have for position number 7. So I thank you both for being here and offering those words.